Hello, and welcome to the Social Small Talk.
Hey everyone, this is Audra Brim, and I am so excited that you've joined me for this episode of the Social Small Talk. I'm the CEO and founder of Brim Media, and I have dedicated my professional life to helping the beauty industry navigate the digital space. I believe that everyone can succeed if we learn from each other. That's why I'm here bringing ideas and information that can help you navigate the noisy digital marketing space. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Social Small Talk. I am Audra Brim, the founder and CEO of Brim Media. I don't like to talk about myself much, which most of you know about at this point. So I just want to cut to the chase and tell you someone that I'm very excited to have on this episode. Her name is Chris-Tia. She is the founder of Thank God It's Natural. And it has been months of me kind of stalking her a little bit. And unfortunately, with the pandemic, it's put a little notch into when we were actually going to get this recorded. But I am so excited to have you on this podcast. Believe me, I know everyone here is very excited as well. And I just want to, introduce you, hear more about you. Can you just tell everyone listening a bit more about you and about the brand, if you don't mind?
Awesome. Audra, thanks so much for having me here today. And I really wish something like this existed when I was getting my company off the ground, because information back then was just not readily available on the beauty industry the way it is at your fingertips today. But a little bit about me. I'm originally from Detroit, went to Harvard for college and for law school. So a lot of people often ask, well, how did you go from being in law school to starting a beauty brand? And I tell people it's an interesting story. When I graduated from law school around early 2000s, like 2003, back then it was completely, I would call the word illegal when I was in school for us to start companies, to, use the university's resources to do any type of business unrelated to our studies. So it's interesting that I'm an entrepreneur today. But the connection was when I graduated from law school, I was under pressure, particularly as a Black woman, to look extremely professional in corporate America. And I was in the midst of growing out my chemical relaxer and starting to embrace my curls, which looked like a disaster back then. I know. And it's the kind of thing, this was like around the time that like Burt's Bees and Whole Foods and all of these kind of West Coast things around like health and wellness were coming into existence. And I was going on my own path around like natural living, natural styles, what have you. And so because of that, I decided to grow out my relaxer. But like I said, I was challenged because I had, this curly or kinky hair, and there weren't a lot of products on the market available for this hair type or commercially available. So I started, looking into that. At the same time, I decided to write a book about my journey, thinking I could help 2 or 3 women along the way. It turned out to be a bestseller. It's called Thank God I'm Natural, the ultimate guide to caring for natural hair. And for me, it's funny being in the beauty industry and looking back on that experience, which was almost 11 years ago with the book. It planted the foundation for us to start a brand, if you will, because the book took me around to different churches, bookstores, festivals, farmers markets, hair shows, talking about like curly hair, how to care for it, what have you. And as a result of that experience, people were like, well, where are the products? And that's how tgin, Thank God It's Natural, was born. But part of our tremendous success to date has been because of that original grassroots following as a niche brand, if you will, that we established very early
on. Clearly I've been super excited because, shocker to any of my listeners out there, but I stalked her just like I do most people. And super creepy, I know. But what I love out of this is it was grassroots. It wasn't all of a sudden one day you woke up and went, you know what, I'm going to start a business. Businesses happen. And sometimes it just kind of falls in your lap in a way. But with everything happening now and people still trying to start businesses, like you said, times are a lot different. People can start a business out of sheer coincidence or just all of a sudden they have a great idea. But what advice would you give those that would want to start their own business today? Almost as if you had to start over today, what would you do?
I think one of the things, one of the first pieces of advice I would give myself is don't feel that like whatever you went to school for or didn't go to school for really matters. Because like I said, I started off as a lawyer and I ended up in the beauty industry. And I think a lot of people, particularly women, feel that they don't have the right skill set. So I have this ideal, so there's no way that I could venture out and do something that's completely unrelated to what I have training for. I would say the second thing is, just start. And even back then, everybody was like pushing people to have a business plan. I don't know if people are still like writing like full page, like 50-page business plans the way they used to, but like, get something down on paper, even if it's like 10 pages, like a slide deck, if you will, and just start like working or nibbling on it. Another thing is don't feel that like, oh my God, and I see this all the time, don't feel like you need like millions of dollars to get your company off the ground unless you're like unless you're like Uber. But like especially if you're in the beauty space, like skincare, hair care, it takes an investment, but like, if you're raising money from your friends and family and you're like raising $300,000 or $100,000 or $500,000, like don't burn through all of that money. Like try to be fairly conservative early on, be as lean as possible, particularly in the beauty space. Like you don't need like millions of dollars to get things off the ground, because the reason for that is even when we release products today, there are so many tweaks and changes and things that you thought were going to be intended for one audience ends up being for another audience. So you have to give yourself the flexibility to be like, we may get this wrong, or it may not be what we thought it was going to be. So don't take all of the money from friends and family and put it towards your initial launch. Like say like if you raise, whatever, $300,000 or $200,000, which I see these things sometimes, like try to put like $60,000 for your lunch, towards your launch, and then put money aside for a rainy day, which is what I think COVID has taught a lot of business owners, if you will.
I'm shaking my head, which no one can see except for us, but I couldn't agree. There's two major things you said, which is one, a business plan. I can't tell you how many businesses I talk to that don't have a clear direction as to where they want to go or what they want to see out of their business. It's flying by the seat of their pants, to be frank. And that, when you have a business plan, and like you said, it doesn't need to be like 30 pages or anything like that. It doesn't need to be crazy, but you do have to have a goal in mind or where you want your business to go. But most importantly, obviously, I love talking about marketing. That's the biggest piece when you talk about marketing. And I stress this a lot, is you really need to talk about a strategy. Without a business plan, it's very hard to actually implement a marketing strategy and a sales strategy and be able to grow a business. And that goes into what you just said too, within the having tons of money. You hear about people going through Series A, Series B, all these different series.
Skincare line, like literally.
Yeah, you're not a tech company. Like right. You don't need to do that. People did not do that back when, we can look at any big company. Those big companies started out small and they grew, and they weren't growing because they did series funding. They did it because they had a plan. They kept testing. And just like you said, a product may not work for the intended audience you thought it was going to work for, but it can work for someone else. So you shouldn't put all your eggs in a basket in your immediate launch to go, oh, yes, this is going to work and I know it and I'm going to make $1 million just from this. That's very much an exception. That's not the rule necessarily when it comes to business.
Absolutely. And I like what you said about the marketing piece of the business plan, because what I do now, and it's funny, it's taken me all these years to focus on it. Like sometimes when you're in startup world, you're kind of in a tornado, if you will, of just like getting things done. But what I've learned about marketing after all these years of doing it, and this is the first year that we've done it, is that we actually listed our priorities. And now it's like, okay, there may be 10 things on the list, but only 5 things really matter. And some of those things can be like, on the list of your top 5 can be like influencers, digital advertising, email, and social. So then you look at everything else on the list and you're like, you can't do 10 things well. Like pick and order them and then say, these are the areas that we're going to focus on. But like I said, in those early stages, you're just getting stuff done, which is great. But like when you get to the point where you're like, you know, a marketing strategy is literally this little 4x6 sheet of paper that's on my desk right now with here are the 10 things that we're going to do to raise awareness. And we're only going to focus on the top 5. So
it's so true. And when you say have your top 10, top 5 key points for a year, we stress this so much because you cannot be good at everything.
Cannot.
Social media marketing especially, is a rabbit hole. If you try to be good on every single one of the social channels, you will fail. I tell every company we talk about, which is you need to start, and honestly, start with one. Be really, really good at one. Once you're amazing at one, add to it. Just because everyone's doing all of them doesn't mean you should be doing them. And it goes back to like, we're in the TikTok craze right now, right? Yeah. Just because TikTok is this huge important thing for some brands doesn't mean it's important to yours. And that goes back to your business plan. If you don't know where you're trying to go towards or your audience or anything like that, that will always hurt you in your marketing plan.
And one thing you said when you were talking about TikTok, that what we've seen where you're like, start with one, like over time, we've also learned that consistency is so important. So say we have like this huge following on Instagram and we have that is very engaged, but like Facebook, we may have the numbers, but people are not engaged. And so it's not the kind of thing where, well, we're like, well, let's do this over on Facebook. But if you're not going to be consistent over there, you might as well put that energy and come back to the place where like people love you, people are engaging with you versus just like throwing random darts at the wall every once in a while. Like you said, on Facebook or doing TikTok, like you've got to be consistent for things to really be effective.
Oh my gosh. I want to bring you everywhere where I speak or talk to clients because I'm like, see, this really is true. And my biggest pet peeve, which a lot of people hear about, and hopefully I'm not stepping on toes, but social channels are different for a reason. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, they have different demographics for a reason. When you post the same stuff, that's not helping you. That is hurting you in the long run because what you post on Instagram is different than what you should be doing on Facebook. Same thing with TikTok. They're meant for different things. And that I keep going back to this business plan and social media strategy and digital strategy because without a plan, without a clear direction, you are in that tornado mode of a startup where you're just going, I need to do this, I need to do that. And I always talk about throwing money at a wall and hoping it sticks. You need to throw money at a wall and know it's going to stick.
I like it. I like that.
Thank you. I love saying it's my favorite thing. I'm going to jump backwards because I want people to know so much more. But, you know, you started out, you were a lawyer. One, that's amazing. Way to be in recovery because I hear that a lot from recovery. Yes. But I just want to know because my background has always been in the beauty industry. Like my mom sold hair products. She was a huge salesperson. I grew up in the beauty industry. So when you don't have that prior beauty experience, how do you navigate the space? How do you find labs? How do you know the packaging? How do you know how to market it? I'd love to know just a little bit more from you, how you were able to maneuver that.
Well, that's a great question because when I was coming up in the beauty industry, say like around 2000 and like starting like around 2006, but like the book 2009 and then like really like doing my research around 2011, I'm not going to say it's a very insular business, but it's like, you got to know people. And it's like, you can, especially back then, it was like the real way to get your business off the ground was like really knowing people. Like, I don't know how it is for people today, but like, so I went to trade shows, which was like a start, but sometimes you go to a trade show and there's like 25 or 30 packaging vendors. You're like, okay, how do I figure this out? There may be like, 15 different labs giving you samples and you're like, well, who's really good and who's really going to target what I need? And to be honest, what ended up happening for me, for anyone who's listening, is that I found, and I was not intentional about this, but now that I think about it in hindsight, it worked. I found the lab from somebody that I met at a trade show because back then, even websites were very rudimentary. So like you would Google like like ethnic skincare, ethnic hair care. And I'm like, what is this website and what do these people actually do? Like, it was just like awful. So anyway, I went to this trade show and I was actually working the trade show, selling like my book and stuff. It was a hair trade show. And there was this guy next to me and he was in a brand. And I was like, can you guys make our stuff? Like, he was like really nice to me. He's like, no, but you can go to this one company and they can't. And so from there, I'm not saying it was like a little bit of a treasure hunt, but it was like, I went to that one facility and then I got to walk their floor. Generally, they'll take you on a tour of the floor so then you can see who they actually make there. And then from there, it was kind of like, you can ask whoever's giving you the tour, like, okay, where do I get bottles from? Or who do you recommend from labels? And then it becomes just like one lead after the next. And then you're like, okay, I need a shipper, like a 6K shipper for like a 6-pack of shampoos. If you make those, who do you recommend? Like, so it's really, I think, one of those industries where it's like recommendation after recommendation after recommendation versus like, I'm going to Google like the person who makes like, you know, corrugate packaging or what have you. It's really like one lead after the other. And if you can get like one good one, like even if you started with the box people first or whatever, they may tell you the lab because they may say, oh, we get people who ship out of this lab. But if you can find the lab or like the labs and at least take a tour of one, if you will, then you really start to like get the ball. That was my experience moving.
I don't think it's changed much. And I say that because I've been to my fair share of trade shows. I technically go to Cosmoprof every year.
Oh, I love Cosmoprof. I wish I would have known you were going.
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll see about this year. We'll see.
September may be a little iffy, but yeah.
But Cosmoprof is probably one of my favorites. But when you started talking about the labs that are like, here, it just reminds me of being on the floor there and going, yes, that is 100% right, because you don't know. But it is the beauty industry is 100% who you know or who you can talk to introduce you. It is a small, tight family, even though it's rather large with brands, but people talk, people know each other. I always try to recommend being able to make sure, just talk, like network yourself as much as possible and find the perfect lab. I think going through a lab first is critical. And then going down the rabbit hole of finding packaging. Because you could be, I'm sure you can speak to this, but packaging, I feel like you can look at forever and go, I'm not sure. And most people change their packaging like 10 different times.
And then I will say this, speaking of or reflecting on one of my experiences. So I met this girl in the beauty industry when I was first getting started. This is about consultants. And she literally wanted to charge me like $90,000 to like help me get this brand off the ground, which is absolutely crazy. Based on what I know. But I will say that I did work with some quote consultants. They were fairly reasonable. Like, I think sometimes you may have to pay like, you know, I'll lay $500 or $1,000. And I'm not saying that's like not a lot of money to some people, but sometimes that little bit of tiny investment, you shouldn't be spending $100,000 for a consultant, but maybe like a couple hundred, couple thousand. And they can tell you, go to this lab. This is what you use for labels. Like that stuff can help you like create a shortcut that like saved you months of time that you would spend researching this stuff.
Oh my gosh. It's so true. I laughed just now because people still do that, like consultants. And again, I try not to hate on the industry at all, but I'm a marketer and I know what marketers are like. And people tend to charge a crazy amount of money without any, and all I can hear is the $100,000 consultant marketer right now going, you think that's too much? Yes.
Exactly.
Do not do it. It's Audra Brim here, taking a quick break. Thanks again for listening. I just wanted to let you know about the offer Brim Media has put together called the 6-Month Strategy to Grow Your Business. This is your chance to have a tailor-made 6-month strategy to grow your business online. Think of us as your digital partner. We work with you to create a cost-effective success plan for your social media and digital marketing efforts. To learn more, go to www.brimmedia.com/6-month-custom-plan. I can't wait to hear from you, and we look forward to working together. As we're talking about launching and how you launched, the beauty industry is very noisy. We both know that. I think most people know that, especially as you look on digital, trying to figure out what is working, what's not working. How do you feel and how did you do to break through that noise? And obviously that time's a little different than now because it's a bit noisier through social, but I'd love to know your thoughts on if you were to start over today, how would you break through that noise?
Oh my goodness. So especially if I was starting over in 2020, social media clearly is super, super important. I think influencers can be very important if you want to help get the buzz out there. But again, you have to make sure what you're putting the marketing behind actually works, that it actually, people actually like it. Sometimes it's better to just put something out there. It's good. Maybe it's great. And then try it with people. Making sure before you put all this marketing energy behind it, just testing it with a small group of people or letting the market kind of give you feedback before you go super hard. But in terms of breaking above the noise, literally clearly social, being focused, being consistent, like you said, picking one outlet. Influencers are also very great, but then sometimes these influencers, it's one product after another, after another, after another. So you really want people who believe in your brand, and that don't work with everybody. And then surprisingly, I know you know this as a marketer, but for people who are listening, email is one of the highest ROIs that you can actually get. Social is great, but once you're in people's inbox, it's the holy grail to purchase and sales and being able to communicate with that customer. So I would say that, but like I said, consistency is the biggest thing. You're not, like you said, it's very noisy, but you got to just keep going, keep going. People have to keep hearing from you, hearing about you, and that consistency is super important.
Oh my gosh. I feel like butterflies are flying around me right now because I'm just I need more people like you. It's so critical. And we always talk about having a 6-month strategy to be able to figure out what you want, where your marketing dollars are, and have a good target metric, a good KPI to figure out what's working for you, what's not. But when you're talking about that social noise and how to break through, obviously I love social media. There's a reason why I'm in this industry. But when you talk about email, the whole point of social media marketing is to get people's email addresses so you can retarget to them. If there is one value add you can get out of this conversation today, it is that. Because if you're not getting into someone's email address, and I say this a lot, which is Facebook can shut down tomorrow.
Absolutely.
All of those followers that you built are gone. You don't own them. But if you have an email address, you have the capability to be able to market to them for a very long time. So making sure that you segue yourself and set yourself up for a strategy that has a 6-month plan, especially early on, that goes, okay, where's my social media funnel going to and how can I get them off of social media and not just be a fan, but really be my influencer, my ambassador that continues to work with me. That's when you're in that sweet spot of getting out of the noise. So
I love it.
You just made me so happy.
I think that we're on the same page. This is great.
Right? That never happens, I feel like, for some reason. But when we're talking about, obviously, social, because, again, it's my favorite thing in the world, which my husband makes fun of me 24/7 about. But when we're talking about Thank God It's Natural, you have such a great presence on social media. What do you think has led to that success? Because I really feel like you actually have what people envy right now, which is there is engagement. There are people that love the brand and want to shout it off the rooftop.
I think it goes back to, I keep saying this, consistency. So say we've been on it. That Instagram is clearly our little home, if you will, our number one outlet. And we've been over there probably since 2014. And so that's 6 years being over there consistently. But beyond that, what we have found in 2020, if we're giving advice based on 2020, is video, video, video. And what we've learned is you can take one JPEG and explain what a product does. And it can be like this beautiful JPEG and it'll get like 65 likes or 300 likes. But you can take that same message and turn it into a 30-second or 40-second video that's not like super like slick or anything, just like, someone on the team saying what the product does. It'll get 10x the number of likes as a graphic. And so what we're finding is like video is amazing for communicating your message. And to be honest, what we have seen are the videos that we have done professionally that are super polished and beautiful do not get the same engagement as the ones where it's like, people, like, what I'm saying? Just like the everyday, this is what's going on at the office. We just look like normal. You may have on some lip gloss type of thing. Like those videos, for some reason, people tend to like trust the information more and engage with it more than things that look like they've been like super professionally done. So like I said, consistency, video, and then we have a little bit of tension on the team between like Instagram, of course, is an outlet that you want things to look beautiful on. But sometimes, again, those things that look super, super beautiful look super, super sterile and they don't generate the engagement. People kind of like feel like it can be too pretty, if you will. And so just finding that balance between what looks like real and authentic and accessible and like what looks like beautiful. So I think that's been kind of our strategy for success on Instagram.
You keep singing things that I want people to hear, which is authenticity. Everyone gets very, very nervous about videos. And, at our agency, we preach this because that's what we see is video is very crucial. But when you tell brands that they need to make videos, one, all they see in their eyes is money going out the door. Or two, you mean I have to get behind a camera. And that's not the case. It goes back to consumers, depending on which way you market, right? You can market to distributors, you can market to consumers. There's lots of things and lots of ways to market to them. But when you're talking about a consumer, they want to put themselves in those shoes. They want to feel like that's their house or that's their bathroom or they're using the product. And the only way to do that is to be very, very real. If you act or create these beautiful videos, they don't perform. And they used to kind of, but consumers are getting very, very smart. And I think we underestimate that in the beauty industry. And this goes back to almost influencers too, when you were talking about, pick the influencers that don't just go from product to product to product. It's the ones that actually care about your brand. And it's because of that. Consumers understand that you're paying those influencers. So instead, you really want that person that really cares about your brand, that talks about it a lot more than just a one-off, like, here's my commercial pitch, because that's the last thing you want to become is the commercial pitch. So
I couldn't agree more. And one of the things I know people like your clients may feel like, oh, I have to get behind a camera. This is so exhausting. What I have found or what my team has found is like, if you're going to do it, do like 5 of them at a time. Like sometimes you can wear the same shirt in 2 videos or 3 videos and then just change the shirt for like 2 other videos. But like when you're in the mood, like just like knock out multiple videos at a time. And then you can just kind of sprinkle them out, over the course of a month or 45 days. But like, it's so like the engagement is off the charts.
I just love it because I just told my team, and funny enough with the videos, I create for Brim Media, we'll do videos and I'll create like 5 in a day. And I have like a weird, like the old school wardrobe racks that I'll bring outfits to so I could do like quick changes because I know if I take too long, I'll get out of the moment of wanting to do them. But if I can get them done quickly, I feel great. And then it's like, all right, I'm done. Let's just get those out.
I think that's the secret. Like when you see people like who are able to like consistently be up on whatever, show up on video. I don't think they're doing like 1 video. And I think you have to knock out 5 of them at a time, if you will. You know what I'm saying? Just to like, yeah.
Yeah. And you don't have to change your outfits, change your earrings, put lipstick on.
Exactly. Exactly.
As long as it looks like it's kind of a different day, it feels a little bit better. And most people won't even notice. It's usually in your head more than anyone else's.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
It makes me, I'm laughing because I seriously just did this yesterday. That's why I'm like, oh yeah, there's my behind the scenes. What do you think is the most important thing about social media in the beauty industry? Like, again, we talk about consistency, but I do feel like in the beauty industry, people try to mimic what other people are doing. Like you're talking about with Instagram, always wanting to feel like it's beautiful. That is definitely changing in 2020 because people are realizing that's not what people care about. Consumers don't care about the beauty anymore. But what do you really feel like is the most important right now?
I think right now it's like authenticity and community. Like these are not, in the old days in marketing, like particularly for larger brands, these were your customers. In these times, like we think of them as like, this is our community. These are not just our fans. Like we're kind of like they're saying during this time, all in this together. And I think when you shift your focus from these are our customers to this is our community, it really shapes and changes your marketing strategy. So for instance, like when COVID hit and we were in the midst of like a product launch, and me and my director of marketing were kind of going back and forth over whether to launch this product like in March of 2020. And I was like, we're in a pandemic. Like right now is not the time to be talking about like, you know, our new rose water collection. Like, let's just wait to see, you know, when this thing clears or if it clears before we start focus on selling. And so one of the decisions we made is let's not sell during this time. Let's just like talk to people there on social. Let's talk about how we can help them to like, you know, have a better life while they're in quarantine. So whether that's like, let's have little cooking classes or talk about like mental health or talk about like, you know, yoga, meditation, what have you. Let's just focus on being a community and not focus on like pushing our product so hard. And it's crazy during a time where we took that position. It was like a record breaking month for us, like in the history of the company. And so that speaks to not only is beauty recession proof, but like literally sometimes if you treat your customers, like I said, like stop thinking of people as customers and start thinking of them as a community, like it actually has a greater ROI.
It goes back to just have a heart. If you have a heart and care about people, we all have businesses for a reason and you started it for a reason. And obviously money is a big deal, but you still need to care about compassion, about people. And during times like the pandemic, like COVID, everything else happening and people losing their jobs, when you actually reach out to them and act as though almost like their family, these people should not just feel like they're a number on a book. They should feel like they are part of your community. They're part of something bigger. I think that's when brands are the most successful, especially when it comes to marketing, because it truly looks into what that company is doing. And I say that because everyone knows brands that have stepped up above and beyond during COVID. And then a lot of us know of the brands that have actually disappointed us. And I've heard more than ever that people will not go shopping at certain places or brands or go back to them because of the way they treated their customers or their employees or anything like that. Having a heart leads to more success than not having a heart. So I love that. You know, I know we keep talking about these unprecedented times, and I feel like that's a very overused word, and I keep using it. But, you know, you just said exactly what I wanted to hear, which is beauty is recession proof. I think we all got freaked out because everything was shutting down and we were almost just like, wait, we're in a recession proof industry. What do you mean? Like, this isn't recession proof. But what do you think brands should really be focusing on to help them out of this, to give them almost like that motivation, like we can do it?
Well, it's funny. A lot of brands, especially when they're indie or at any stage, they're always like the holy grail is like, okay, I want to get into Target or I want to get into this big retailer. And I think one of the things that was important about, or what we took away from COVID and even like looking back on this conversation, is that community is so important. And what I mean by that is you want to focus on taking your community to your own website and owning that relationship. So many times people get in the beauty business and they're so amped on, I want to sell here and I want to sell here and I want to sell here. But all you're doing is pushing your community somewhere else and they're capturing that information. It's like you want to focus, to the extent that you can on doing business directly with your consumer, but also giving them other options of places to shop. But like we have started to focus on that more, even though we are kind of widely available. But like, again, if you stop thinking of people as customers and start thinking of them as your community, you want to be protective of your community. You've worked hard to build it. You've been consistent. You want their feedback when things go wrong. And I think that beauty brands should also be focused on like nurturing that relationship on their own kind of platforms, meaning their own selling platforms, their own e-commerce platforms. And then, like I said, as a alternative, thinking about sharing or encouraging them to go support their partners.
Yeah, your margins are obviously higher when you sell on your own e-commerce site than if you start going to other places. So it's very critical to start looking into that direction. And the fun part is Facebook is making it easier with Facebook Shops, going from Instagram and Facebook and being able to shop directly on social media. I know people have been able to do that with certain other things, but this is actually a very easier situation for consumers. So it's funny that you can be able to really focus on a certain part of your business and create that community. And I absolutely love it. I always go back to what you said in the beginning, which is making sure that business plan, that strategy, that you have 5 bullet points, 10 bullet points in a year that you want to successfully build up to. And no matter whatever happens throughout the year, at least having an eye on a prize will help you focus, because I think anything can happen. Something else can happen tomorrow, but we can't predict that. But what you can help is be able to plan for future events, to be able to succeed in your business. So
I love it. That's great advice.
Thank you. Chris-Tia, this was a breath of fresh air. I don't say that very often, and I really appreciate it. And I'm so excited we finally got to talk. But I'd love if the listeners could find you, Thank God It's Natural. Can you just let everyone know a bit more about your social handles, possibly email, whatever works for you?
Perfect. So thank you again for having me on today. This was great because I love marketing and you love marketing. So that's why I think there's such a good vibe. But the listeners, you guys can find me at Chris-Tia Donaldson. I'm on LinkedIn at Chris-Tia Donaldson. I'm on Instagram at tgin CEO. You can reach the company at TGI Natural on Instagram. And like I said, we're available pretty much nationwide at Ulta, Target, Walmart, CVS, and pretty much any major retail outlet.
Well, thank you again. Whoever is listening out there, go check them out. They have built so much following and they really have a great presence on digital. And if you're looking for someone to emulate or at least see what's happening, I suggest going there. So thank you again. Thanks so much for listening to the Social Small Talk. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please visit our website at brimmedia.com for more show notes and additional episodes. If you have time, please subscribe to the podcast and consider rating and reviewing the show. It always helps other people find us. By the way, I love hearing from listeners. So send me an email at audra@brimmedia.com with your feedback. And if you send me a question, maybe I'll read it on the show. Don't worry, it'll be anonymous.